Headquarters in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Live. A rather short episode, if we may tell you that. Well, the official opposition, the Democratic Alliance, marched on Nkandla today, defying warnings by the local ANC and traditional leaders. We discuss what happened and the debates this latest episode has triggered. But that's in the second part of tonight's program. First up, we take a look at South Africa's private security industry. With unemployment so high, scores of young South Africans are resorting to this industry where, we are told, some are earning as little as 1,800, and wait for it, a month, and that's for a 12-hour day shift, 6 days a week. Now, there's close to 2 million of these men and women in South Africa today who are registered. Although, of course, as some say, the number has gone less and less. In other words, there are fewer people who are actually active in the industry. Now, if you paid attention to the Minister of Police this past week, the industry, he says, is under threat from organized criminals. One of the reasons Parliament is considering introducing more regulations, including tightening the rules on foreign ownership. Now, two of the industry's most influential players, umbrella body, the Security Industry Alliance, as well as the South African Transport and Allied Workers Union, are here to discuss the state of this industry. Representing SATAU is its General Secretary, Zenzo Mahlangu. And from the Security Industry Alliance, we have the association's CEO, Steve Conradi. Our SMS line is already open. The number is 34065. That number again, 34065. And our email, sundaylive@sabc.co.za, and our Facebook page, Sunday Live. Let me start with you, Conradi. Not a good picture overall. What is the industry's sense?
We also remember that this industry only at this stage has registered 411,000 with the regulator active security officers, and not 2 million. We need to remember that. Also, if you take the size of this industry, and it is made out that the size of this industry is enormous. If you compare it to other countries, the ratios between police and private security in South Africa is not different to that in Australia and America.
But can
having said that, also remember that this industry is the biggest supplier of entry-level jobs into the labor market, which is positive for the labor employment point of view. Specifically, that those guys are getting a first job into the labor market. So from that point of view, it's a positive, basically, for employment in this country. And that is definitely a positive.
Let me then.
So we supply by far the most entry-level jobs, the first job for somebody in the market.
Which, I mean, as you're saying, is a plus. But then on the downside of that same equation, you have a situation where people are saying, well, but they quote examples, for example. I mean, I was talking to someone who was talking about what's happening in their complex. In their complex, they say they get billed for 8,000 and 10,000 rands per security guard, but the security guards themselves earn about 1,800 and 2,000. What then people ask is...
You also need to remember that there's laid down minimum wages in the Sectorial Determination 6. And SIA, Security Industry Alliance, our main drive is compliance, 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 specifically. And it is time that the regulator do its job to get rid of the fly-by-nights, because those figures that you quote is not the minimum figures, as my colleague will tell you, basically. Those are fly-by-nights operating in the industry that should not operate in the industry. And those are the guys that paint this industry with a negative picture.
Okay.
And I want to urge each and every viewer tonight to ask the correct questions from your service provider and make sure that he is compliant or not. And if it's not compliant, and registered, but also compliant in all aspects with minimum wages, training, overtime, all the different payments that he is obliged to pay to those employees, and conditions particular. And we went on a drive a year and a half, 2 years ago, specifically driving compliance. And from the industry point of view, we are there for regulation, specifically for that reason.
Okay. Zenzo, is it fly-by-nights, from your experience, who are actually responsible for the lower wages and as well as the attendant sort of problems?
I wouldn't say so, yes or no, and no. Generally, the industry is not paying at all. It's paying nothing, if we're to say the least. And besides, you will find that as much as there is a regulation from the CEDA, which was then the SOP by then, the payment by employers is always not effected in that way. In this industry, there's this thing always called pay queries, which is deliberate. Always. You will never, ever get your salary tallying with the days that you have worked. We are always short of the days, and it's deliberate in the sense that, for instance, you employ about 10,000 people, and you shortchange about half of those. It's a lot of money. Two, most of the monies that they are deducting, for instance, the UIF, Provident Fund, as little as it is, it doesn't get to the end where it should be. When you get laid off, you go to the Department of Labor, your money hasn't been paid. We're working with a lot of this.
Is that true as well for the established companies that Steve contends are actually doing what they are supposed to do?
It may be.
In other words, it's the fly-by-nights that are a problem. Do you agree there?
I'm sure fly-by-nights, it's more or less like adding fuel on the fire itself. There are most of fly-by-nights, which to him are fly-by-nights, which I think is referring to small and upcoming companies. Not all of them.
He's shaking his head.
Not all of them. Maybe I need to understand his definition of fly-by-night before I come. But my understanding is that you would find that those referred to be fly-by-nights, they are normally the small ones and upcoming. I think one needs to understand exactly. But to us, what we want to see, it's a proper regulation of the industry. And it's a little bit bizarre that, as the employers will say, no, we must have a body that regulates. Yet, they are part of the negotiations. They know what should be paid and how it should be paid, but they want another body to come and monitor them. Even if that is done, some of them have got, you always have your timetable, your schedules. They have a correct one that they normally show inspectors when they come and inspect, and another one that they normally pay workers. The downward, this never shown to the employer. So it's a matter that we think we need to apply our minds very diligently and find means and ways of dealing with industry through and make sure that at the end of the day, there is a proper payment. It is true that those who pay, they are billed a lot of money. We know that. But the portion that goes to a person who stands for 12 hours, no sleeping whatsoever, he doesn't get paid anything. Okay. Very small.
Very briefly, still on this question, your response directly. Are you still insisting that it is those fly-by-nights and the established ones are, in fact, by and large, complying and doing or responding to your call, which you said is about compliance.
And that's exactly our point. And specifically, this industry under the Security Industry Alliance will go a far way in order to assist the role players to get the fly-by-nights, those that are not compliant, those that exploit their employees and not paying the correct wages, as you say. Okay. We don't need them in this industry. In South
and hopefully, Africa, as an industry, you're being active in actually making sure that those people are weeded out. Absolutely. Now, I want us to move on to the question of foreign ownership.
Correct.
Is foreign ownership, which is what Parliament, I mean, you were in Parliament this week, where government is trying to regulate foreign ownership in the hope that it's going to help prevent things like being infiltrated by organized criminal gangs. Is that, in your view, a solution, or at least part of the solution?
First of all, I need to say that the reason under the memorandum of objects attached to this bill was that there's an increased threat to national security. Up till now, we cannot understand or get an explanation what is meant by that. The other point that I want to make, that the limitation of foreign ownership on those, as stated in this bill, specifically, if you registered with SIRA, you need to be a South African citizenship. So all those companies in the guarding sector or response sector, at this stage, their management is South Africans. So by selling 51% of their stake to local citizens, that will not make a difference to the face of the management of that company. The main concern in this is that the definition has been expanded to include the electronic sector as well, which means now you're talking about your big companies manufacturing, supplying electronic equipment operating in this industry. They also, most of them are foreign owned companies, Siemens or Sony, you call them. So which part of Siemens do they need to sell now, the 51% that operate within this industry?
So by and large,
I think the main concern on this country's economy, we've seen in the last week of the deficit in our balance of payment. Now, if these companies decide not to continue their business in South Africa, this is not a good thing, and we're in trouble.
Zanzo,
and our employees will suffer because of that.
Your workers are going to suffer if status quo, in other words, we move in the direction that is being suggested, limiting foreign ownership.
I don't think workers will suffer. I think we do have enough skill locally to provide that service. To me, the writing of the bill, whether it's not necessarily the way it should be, but ultimately we must have a control of foreign ownership. It can't just be not controlled. And I think the bill is not necessarily saying let's just cut off everything. It says no, reduce to a point where we should have control. And I think workers will not suffer in that instance, in our view. And we think that the more we have them, it means more money remittance outside. It's not necessarily within here. I think it's a debatable matter. In our view, we don't think it will affect our workers. We believe that there must be control of this particular ownership matter.
Gentlemen, both of you, can I sincerely apologize? It is through no fault of our own. Something happened today. We've got to end it here, but I promise we're going to go back to this topic sometime in the very near future. Thanks to both of you for coming, and my sincere apologies for treating you like this.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's how we come to the end of the security industry discussion.